Yes. This is one of the things that happens with the thyroid gland. So, in the structure that's present for our thyroid gland, right on this back side of it, right on the posterior side, I've got 4 little glands called my parathyroid glands. Oh boy, you would think something so small wouldn't be such an issue. Oh, yeah, they are. Okay, so they secrete, well, since they're parathyroids, the parathyroid hormone, PTH. Okay? Those are not under the control of the pituitary. So these parathyroid glands, they are going to be active if calcium levels are low. So my thyroid gland was worried about calcium levels being high, and if that was the case, store the calcium. My parathyroid glands are saying, well, if calcium level is too low, guess what? Osteoclasts get to work. Break the bone down and release the calcium. Is that not cool? And these can actually create major issues in people. So my parathyroid hormone is worried about calcium levels being too low and needing to increase these levels in the blood. So one of the things that will happen, it will affect my osteoclast, break the bone down, and at the same time, act on the kidneys to not allow release of calcium through the urine. How many of y'all take vitamins? How many of you like to take a calcium supplement? Huh? Okay, okay. Interesting. Okay, okay. So the goal, return calcium to the blood, raise the blood levels, and keep it normal. Now here's something that we found out the hard way about the thyroid gland and the parathyroids. When people used to have thyroid problems, which a lot of people do, okay, it's very common to have thyroid problems. It used to be that people would have their thyroid gland removed. The problem was that meant removing, because the parathyroids can be very embedded on that posterior side of the thyroid gland, that they also got removed, and people died from having their thyroid gland removed because there was now no control whatsoever for calcium levels, and that meant no control for nerve or muscles, okay, and the body just couldn't handle that and people died. Well, when they finally found out about these parathyroid glands, when people had to have their thyroid gland removed, they left little pieces in. Well, that didn't really help a whole lot with the problem because that meant there was still thyroid gland there to function. So now, a lot of times, if people have thyroid issues, rather than now going in and doing any type of surgical removal, they're given a radioactive iodine pill. Now, how do we associate iodine with the thyroid gland? Does anybody know?
There's almost a T3 and T4.
They're dependent on that iodine atom. When I was growing up, the only salt we had was the Morton salt, the one that's in the blue can with the, you know, the little girl and the umbrella and stuff. And you would see iodized. The reason for that is because iodine is important to the function of the thyroid. Without it, the thyroid develops a goiter. Now, in some lesser developed countries, this is still an issue. People still suffer from the goiters, okay? We don't really have that problem now, mainly because with the production of food that we have now, our food has lots of salt in it, okay? Because we eat so much preserved and frozen and in can and blah, blah, blah food, okay, that we no longer really need iodized salt. You go to the store now and you look on that spice aisle, what do you see for salt? Oh my goodness, the Himalayan and the Mediterranean and the Dead Sea and all of this salt all over the place. And if you go and if you look at the bottle, if you pick it up and read it, it will say, not a source of iodine. Okay, why? Because our food, the way the food is made now in this country, we're getting it, trust me, okay? So they would remove it, people would die. So if they were given a radioactive iodine pill, the only organ that takes up iodine is your thyroid. Radioactive. There used to be a song about that. And I'm talking about the first one, the way old one. I think back in the 70s or 80s or something. Just saying. Okay? What does radioactivity do to something? Destroys it. So therefore it would destroy the thyroid gland. And the person that has to have that done just simply takes a synthetic hormone for the rest of their life. So thyroid gland is, chances are, once you get into your field, you're going to come across patients that are going to have something wrong with either their thyroid or their parathyroid. Strongly are probably going to come across that. Isn't that interesting? Adrenal glands. Love those glands. How many of y'all like your adrenal gland? And all that fight or flight stuff they put out? Yeah. My adrenal gland sits right on top of my kidneys. If you remember, in my sympathetic nervous system, we had the fiber that synapsed directly in the medulla, the middle portion, which was the source of what we know as that adrenaline, the epinephrine, norepinephrine, that sort of stuff. Well, now we can see that the adrenal glands, yes, for the medulla, it does work with that part of the sympathetic nervous system, okay? Now, those chemicals chemicals from that, because it is released, okay, we're going to say that the adrenal gland is part of our endocrine system as well as that autonomic nervous system, okay? When we look at the medulla portion of it, the one that we associate with adrenaline, the fight or flight, okay? The chemicals that get released, epinephrine, everybody's heard of that, right? Okay? Glucose sparing, meaning inhibit my secretion of insulin. Less gets consumed. This allows my muscles and my organs to have the ability to use alternatives for fuel. This means I can use like fatty acids, okay? It means if it has to, it'll use proteins. We don't want that, okay? The way that we want our body to use material, sugars first, fats second, proteins last, okay? Because if you have to use protein as an energy source, chances are you're breaking down skeletal muscle. And if that happens, it does not rebuild. People who are under chronic stress, okay, they will tend to increase their body fat and decrease their muscle because of what's happening. The body is having to look for alternative fuels, meaning once sugars are consumed, the next one it'll look for are the fats. And if the fats get consumed and stuff's not coming to it, it'll go to proteins. So it's a really bad cycle when you're under chronic stress. Norepinephrine, vasoconstriction, vessels. My vessels will constrict. This will increase blood glucose if we have it available and help circulate any free fatty acids I might have available, because both of those can be used for energy. Because at this point, the body needs to prepare for fight or flight. So it's going to look first to the bloodstream for the products. Like, for example, if you ate the meal, okay? And then, okay, another good example. Anybody in here a runner? Okay. Well, no, are you a runner kid? Like just a couple miles a day or marathons?
I run all kinds. I used to, but I used to run the 400, but then I turned into distance, so I will run a couple miles.
Okay. And do you happen to know people who might be those marathon runners? Yeah, y'all know. Okay, yeah. All right. So, what is something they might do for about 3 days before a race?
Condition?
Well, they're conditioning 24/7 pretty much.
I eat a lot of carbs.
They carb load. Why?
So the body can suck what they ate instead of their muscle.
Carbs in our body is sugar. The first thing we do is temporary storage, glycogen in the liver and the muscle cells. So if they carb load for 3 days before the race, when the race gets here and they're out there and they're warming up and doing all that sort of stuff, and then they start the race. I don't run, by the way. Okay, if I'm running, y'all need to run with me.